everyone, it's Serotonin, and welcome to the first episode of the Serotonin Receptor. This week's episode, I will be giving you a little background on who I am and why I want to do this show. So let's get started. Alright, I honestly could never get tired of that song. I love it so much. So here we are getting right down to the real nitty gritty. So, the Serotonin Receptor is a show that I've been hoping to put out for a little while now. It's sort of always been my intention, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to reach out to people to let people know that I'm available to connect with if you're kind of freaking out with what you're learning as you are becoming aware and awake to the actual reality of our planet. I'm going to apologize on behalf of my cat, who is going to meow quite a little bit in the next little while. So apologies in advance. But I'm not letting her out because there's a windstorm outside. There's like 125 km/h winds gusting, so not a chance. Anyway, so the serotonin receptor format is Q&A. So what I would like, if you would like to contact me to talk about any of your questions or concerns, you can at sarah.tonen.receptor@gmail.com, and that's sarah.tonen, TONEN.receptor, RECEPTOR @gmail.com. Over the course of the week, I will collect whatever mail comes in, whatever questions need to be addressed or would like to be addressed. And on a Friday night, I will stop collecting for that week's episode. And then on a Saturday night, I will have had it recorded and posted on my Spreaker podcast, and I will get all of that information into the description box for those of you who are coming to me via YouTube and those of you that are finding me other ways, then you can find me on Spreaker.com under serotonin receptor. So that said, why do I want to do this? Well, like many of us who have become aware and awake, um, we all, I think, I can't even imagine that anyone wouldn't have gone through a period of serious distress after having become aware to so many of these things. And it kind of, the further down you go in the rabbit hole, you kind of have to get over it over and over and over again. I mean, it's like being re-traumatized again and again in some ways. And in some ways, it gets a little bit easier as you move down into the rabbit hole because your eyes quite literally get used to the darkness, and you start to understand that there's more to it than what you see. You start like it, and I think that that's kind of the first fear, is that you're like, oh my gosh, if this is all happening, then what else don't I know? And there's a ton that you don't know when you're first starting out, when you're first understanding. And as you move down into the rabbit hole, I think it becomes a little bit less distressing, learning to live with the not knowing, learning to live with the we have no idea what they're up to. When people say things like, if you ever knew everything that is happening really in this world, you would never sleep again. That kind of feeling. When you find out about the horrific intentional child abuse and sacrifice that happens, you wonder if you're ever going to be able to be intimate again, or even function again in some ways. And so many times we have all been faced with that. And I think part of the other thing is that when you realize what's been going on, you are concerned for your own sanity. I mean, really, you are, because it's like a break from everything you've ever known to be real. It's a break from your own reality. And once you start to really understand that this is a huge lie, you start becoming terrified of people in the establishment thinking that you're crazy, because you're not. And so where do you go and who do you talk to? And the the absolute, and I wanted to say the word solitude, but it's not. You've never felt so alone in your life. And I know that if you're hearing me, you know that feeling. You're either feeling it now or you felt it once at one point. And I am putting the show out actually in something of a response now. I do not want to say that I'm in any way associated with the Truth, Honor, and Integrity show or Thomas Williams and the People's Club or anything like that, because I haven't really been interacting with them at all. But I've been listening to Thomas Williams now for over a year and a half. And he's been saying over and over again, people are going to need support as they wake up. And so it's sort of dawned on me that, if not I, then who? And so this is why I'm starting the show. Now, I have not spoken to Thomas Williams. He has not given any kind of approval or anything. I did reach out because I do want to have support coming through the People's Club, in order for me to be true and to have, what's the word I'm looking for? Not responsibility, but to take the responsibility that I need to take in order to run something like this, and for me to be accountable. That was the word I was looking for. It's really important. Accountability is super important when you're working with people's in vulnerable positions. So I really want to encourage you guys to listen to my introduction episode. It's only 5 minutes long, but it gives you an idea of who I am and what my background is in a professional sense. And now I'm going to give you a bit of a background in a personal sense. But I'm going to, in some places, I'm going to have to skip over some of the information a little bit. Like details are not, I'm not going to be providing a lot of details because some of the people that I'm going to be talking about have not been aware of me doing this program or haven't given me permission to talk about them in sort of a public way. So Um, as I have said and is written in the description of the show, this is not therapy. However, at all times I will be keeping information confidential because that is everybody's right to privacy. In a world where there is no privacy anymore, I believe in transparency, but I also believe in privacy, personal privacy. So it's a thin line we walk, you know. So everything's a dance, right? Anyway, so me. So um, I've understood from a pretty early age that I'm not like everyone else. I don't imagine that I came from another planet. I don't know. I do believe in reincarnation. I don't know how many lives I've had, or I don't know anything about that. I really don't. And I'm not super interested. I'm more interested in what we're doing here right now. I can find out all that stuff later once we're kind of out of the crux of it all. But I did want to say that I had such an intense and vivid dream life, my whole life, that it fostered a sense of aloneness here because I couldn't share this whole extra life that I was having with people. And I knew very early on that I wasn't. This was dream life, but it was very full and pretty amazing. And so I have felt a lot of solitude here and a lot of just isolation because it's really hard for me to explain my perspective and my experience when I'm experiencing so much of it without the people that I am with for the rest of the day and vice versa. I don't know what is my real life. Is it here? Is it now, or is it the dream time? I don't really know. I think they both are, and they both have equal importance to me. So, um, that said, um, when I was the first biggest dream that I had, and it didn't mean much to me. I mean, I remembered it very well, but it didn't mean much to me until much later in life. In fact, in only the last couple of years, I've started to realize it actually had some significance. Um, it has a lot of similarities to dreams where people have talked about experiences they've had, and it turns out there was an abduction involved. So I was, and I'll be very brief about this. I was about 6 years old when I had the dream, and the dream was of me leaving with the cast of Sesame Street, including some of the Muppets and most of the grown-ups. And I had ended up having to, I think I have to take my cat to the litter tray in the back porch. Hang on just 1 second. Okay. Way less distracting. Okay, so here I am. I'm having my dream, and I'm in an airplane with most of the cast of Sesame Street, and it's all of the people plus a bunch of the Muppets, and they're all kind of stuffed in overhead bins and well, the Muppets are anyway, and we're all sitting in seats and whatnot. And I traveled quite a lot as a child, so this is not an unfamiliar place for me to be. And we're on the plane, and we're getting off the plane, and we're walking along sort of the corridor that you do in sort of the generic airport on your way to your customs. And suddenly I turned to Maria, and I said, I don't want to go. I want to go home. And she's like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yes, I am sure I want to go home. We've got the whole crew, around us, Muppets and all." And she said, "Okay, well, I can't get you home. We have to take you to the king of this whatever land they were in, and he can help you go home." So we go to this place, not that I mean, it was like pretty much, a finger snap, and we were in a different room, and there's this king, and I have to walk down this corridor, and I say to him, I want to go home. And he says, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Okay, well, then just open your eyes." But up to that point, I was desperately trying to go home. I wanted to go home. And I remember trying so hard to wake myself up and just be home. And he said, "Okay, just open your eyes." And I opened my eyes, and there I was in my bed. And that meant nothing to me for many, many years, except for the fact that I thought it was kind of like it just stuck out. It stood out to me, but it didn't, there was no, alarm bells happening for that dream. Until just recently when I started realizing that, children of a certain age do, if they have experiences, it's usually around that time, and they usually choose people that the child will be familiar with that aren't family members, but that something that won't alarm them or distress them. And this idea of me being taken somewhere and then suddenly realizing that I didn't want to go and I wanted to come home, so to speak, and then I was allowed to come home. But they asked me a couple of times, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" "Yes, I am." And when I think about that now, I wonder if it was an opportunity for me to not be here now. Um, if it was an out for me, somebody wanted to give me an out for not coming to Earth at this point, because that dream just resonates so hard with me now. But anyway, I digress. So having this life that was so rich and important to me, that was my dream life, like I said, kept me kind of isolated as a kid. And I always seemed to be kind of in opposition with the kids around me. Like I wanted to kind of fit in, but then I just really, really didn't. I had to be very true to who I am. And so I was always making decisions based on my own interests, but also there's a part of me that really just didn't want to be like everyone else. And so I often sought out the different things, the things that people my age weren't interested in. And I was also, I'm the youngest in my family, so I had the benefit of having older siblings. But that was a big thing for me, was always kind of looking for the different, always looking for something wasn't quite right. Um, I wanted to know more about that. Um, and I had enormous, interests in ancient cultures, especially Egypt. And when I discovered the Mayan culture, I didn't know that other cultures made pyramids, and I was like immediately fascinated, and I wanted to know more. And I always wanted to be at, antique shows and that kind of thing. I was always drawn to the old and history. Um, I would say that I had a number of awakening moments in the course of my life. Um, and I do feel that I was on a real path when I was still in high school. I knew a lot about esoteric practices and occult practices. I wasn't super interested in following them and being part of like a coven or anything like that. They always seemed to be like really, I did for a very short period of time have some interest in. I did actually attend um, a circle coven meeting or something when I was like 15, and it was just a bunch of like grown-ups making crowns out of um, like cigarette paper. It was just like the most depressing thing, honestly. It completely cured me of wanting to hang out with people like that. Um, but I really do feel that there was a real pull to sort of recognizing that this whole language existed, this whole other thing that nobody else was paying attention to. And I remember being about 14 years old when I was raised Catholic, and realizing like here I am, like I'm in church and they're talking about a blood sacrifice. That is messed up. And being very disturbed by that, just thinking like there's something very, very wrong with this. It was probably one of the first few times I'd actually paid attention to what was actually happening in mass. Like I went every week, but I would sit there and draw or whatever. Like I was what's the word I'm looking for? My parents, kind of let me do whatever. I was a pretty easygoing kid, and so I was kind of, allowed to like basically draw through church. So anyway, um, the big moment for me, and the big moments um, that happened to me. I think, 9/11 was a huge awakening for me, and only because 4 short years before that, a family member of mine had a nervous breakdown, which resulted in what looked like to be schizophrenia, when they were on tour with a well-known band that wasn't super well known at the time, but is now like household name. And I'm not covering up anything for anyone, because this person is well recognized as being satanic and being part of the sex trafficking rings and satanic rings. Like, there's just no doubt, people are on it, and they're aware of this person, and I'm sure there's lots of investigation going on with that particular person, because it's pretty obvious. But anyway, this particular family member, I believe, witnessed some kind of, I don't know, some kind of ceremony, some kind of very extremely disturbing ritual. And it affected them enormously. And this was actually the reason that I went into training as a psychotherapist, was because this person who was very close to me had this nervous breakdown, and it affected everyone in my family, and it affected all their friends and everyone. Like, it was, the ripple effect was enormous. And I wanted to, number one, absolutely number one, I wanted to know how to cope with this. I wanted to know how I was going to cope with my family for the rest of my life, because no matter what I think of them and no matter what I feel about them, they're my family, and I am attached to them. And even if I never talk to them ever again for the rest of my life, I'm still tied to them. There's still that quantum entanglement, and I needed to be okay with my family. And so that was the primary reason that I went into training as a psychotherapist. But also, secondly, I thought that if this could happen to me, and it wasn't even my direct experience, but somebody that I care about very, very much, and I saw that ripple effect, I saw how badly the effect was on so many people. I thought, in a world of people who just want to get ahead, who's gonna who's gonna help? And I wanted to help. And so here I am again. If not I, then who? Well, I don't know. And I think we do all always imagine there's a lot of people out there like, I'm very interested. I like the Q movement. I find it very exciting. I love puzzles. If I was still interested in time wasting, I would be all over Sudoku still. I love stuff like that. In fact, I have a channel where I talk a lot about suppressed history and trying to piece together the puzzles of all the stuff that they have covered up. And it's my YouTube channel, and you're absolutely more than welcome to check it out. I have lots of people, hopefully, who are checking in on this podcast who've actually come via my YouTube channel. So you can check that out. It's called Serotonin, Sarahtonen. But that said, I'm very interested in being here and helping and digging, and I don't know how not to be in the rabbit hole anymore. I'm not entirely sure how to watch TV or movies or even listen to music. I'm so angry and disgusted at the practices of so many of the people who I used to admire and enjoy listening to, watching. Um, and, it really is like a reawakening. Um, every day there's something new to learn. If it's not reptilians, if it's not Tartaria, if it's not Hyperborea or free energy, or the Moors, or blacks being the actual indigenous peoples of America, or I mean, you name it, free energy, blue avian. This person's getting exposed, that person's getting exposed. That turns out that, like just so much stuff, like I was so upset when I found out that Gaia TV was run by Satanists, and, Graham Hancock is like hand in glove with them. It's hard to be on shaky ground every day, right? Just as soon as you get your footing, it slips away from underneath you again. But I digress. I, you know, I, I've had a lot of ups and downs. Um, I've gone to, I've had to reject so many things. I mean, after I started learning, all this stuff, and becoming more awake and aware, I opened up, I left my private practice as a psychotherapist because of this sort of tiptoe towards normalization of pedophilia and the criminalization of free thinking within the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual. Really creepy. And creep, right? Being the active word there. So I ditched my private practice, and then I opened up a business whereby I was running a business which was a co-sharing space for um, alternative healers and practitioners and divination practitioners. And then I started, learning more about like tarot and circles and covens and, white magic and black magic and gray magic and magic in general and spell casting and intentions and fourth dimensional energy. And I was just like, ah. So I just left that business. And that was a bit of a hard one. And I just walked. I'm hoping to get my investment back, but I'm walking because I've changed too much. I don't know if I can change the business to stay in alignment with what I need to do. So I had to walk because there's probably about 70 people that were, I mean, the business, it was a successful business. I was like, we were doing well. We were going to be doing well, but it was all wrong. And and I'm very lucky to have people in my life understand that it's so important that I have to be in alignment with source or myself. Perhaps maybe I just need to be in alignment with myself, but it is absolutely crucial. I can't falter, especially now. It's so important now more than ever. Um, and so I've walked from that, and you know, this is just this is necessary and this is important. And there's a part of me that kind of almost doesn't want to do it, because I would just like to not do anything and just kind of be. But I think I can be and still listen and help a little bit. And I know that my experiences will be of some use. I'm not always going to talk about myself. In fact, I'm hoping that I won't talk about myself too much at all, because it's not important, moving forward, for you guys to know everything about me, but for you to understand that I've been there. I've had my freakouts. I've quit jobs, right after 9/11. Um, I was working in a pub, and we had the news cycle on pretty much 24/7, like right after that. And in the next 72 hours, there was so much information that came across CNN that never got talked about again. And including the eradication of the border between the U.S. and Canada, should there be martial law. Um, and so, little things like that. And I ended up um, having massive panic attacks right after that, like within the first 48 hours after that happened. Um, and that was a really hard one. A lot of people were kind of freaking out, but I was freaking out because I knew that it wasn't, I knew the narrative was wrong immediately, like straight away, I knew it was wrong. Especially because of what had happened with my family member 4 years earlier. And this person had been actually living in New York at the time, and they had a lot of very, very freaky things to say about New York. And for the 4 years between their nervous breakdown, their experience, and 9/11, I got told a lot of quote unquote crazy stuff. Like, for example, that the music industry is run on the blood of children. I was told that babies and children are dying. They are dying under the streets in rivers of blood. Like, crazy accurate stuff that just people would not have understood. I mean, I was just shutting it down. I was listening. Thank God I was listening, because I've remembered everything that this person said to me, and it was part of the reason I could corroborate so much of what came out. There was so many times over the last, like, especially since Q, especially since Trump, when everything has finally been exposed, but over the last, like, 6, 7 years, and especially after Sandy Hook and all that kind of stuff, just so many times I have thought back about what this person said to me and couldn't believe that this information that this person had said during, an emotional rant, like just an absolute, like almost like pouring of the soul, or just like it was like the retching of just verbiage. It was unbelievable. And so much stuff that became corroborated later through intel sources. Unbelievable. Um, yeah, so Sandy Hook, that was another one that I was in real time. The Boston bombing, that was another one in real time. I was like, no, it's not okay. And it's really hard. It's really hard to make sense of it, because all the other people who are calling it out, I find for the most part on the internet, are really aggressive and angry. And so there's a lot of anger that comes out with the knowledge that this is not right. And I don't know how necessary that is. I think it's throwing us off our path and it's going down the wrong direction. If we hold on to that. Now, I think it's super important to have your feelings. You need to feel the emotions that you're feeling, get them out, purge that, because the more we feel heard, the better we feel. And maybe that's what it is that I want to do. I want people to feel like they've been felt heard. Just the other day, I wrote in a question to Thomas Williams at the Truth, Honor, and Integrity show, and he actually read it out, and he didn't give me an answer. He didn't give me a solution, sorry, but he did give me the answer that I was looking for, which gave me an enormous amount of trust. And immediately I felt better, and immediately I felt held, like emotionally, and that there was somebody out there who heard me, properly heard me, because what he said after he read out my question put a lot of faith for me into him. It reinforced the faith that I have about him. It reinforced it a lot. And so, I don't know, I'm not here to save anyone or anything, but I guess I'm here to help you feel heard, and to let you know that I know what you're thinking about, even for that one moment, and that I'm with you on that for one moment, and to give you the strength to turn around and be supportive to someone else who's waking up, and to encourage each other to be nicer on the internet, to reach out to each other. It's hard to do it face to face right now because trust is really big, and it's really hard, and there's so much division. But if you can find a small group of people, even if it is online for now, I do want to encourage everyone to try and find living, breathing relationships where they can talk openly. But if you can't, do the best you can to hold up as many people as you can while they're going through this, even if you're only 5 steps ahead. If that person who's 5 steps behind you is really faltering and they're struggling, maybe you can say, yeah, I know that's messed up. What do we do about it? But I've just found that a lot of my salvation, my personal salvation, because I don't know who else is going to help me out right now but me, a lot of that has come from being supportive to others. And I will say this is my little therapy tip for the day. When I was doing group therapy, I ran group therapy and I did individual therapy. And individual therapy is very satisfying when you have a good client that is committed to themselves, like someone who really loves themselves. And not in a passionate way, but in like a slow burning kind of responsible way, like not someone who's like, I just think I'm awesome, but someone who's like, no, I do need to move forward and respect myself, that kind of slower paced person. But group therapy is so potent because when you're going into group therapy, you're there as the client, but you're also there as the support. And so you have your moment, like group therapy, there's, the basic rules, no crosstalk, I statements only, no attacking each other, blah, 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 like that kind of stuff. And verbal attacking, obviously. No physical attacking either, but, Um, and so, you'll be there and you'll pour out your bit, you'll say your piece and you'll contribute or you'll, unload whatever it is that you need to do. And, and then someone else will unload and then you'll like help build them up later. When you're doing individual therapy, you're there for like your hour and a half, like however long your session is, and you're just kind of unloading, and you can come out of that session feeling really depleted and really exhausted and a bit like the world, like, I'm a bit of a victim and a bit of a victim or a lot of a victim, and I really, that's the one thing I have a huge problem with right now is people who are wallowing in victim mentality and people who promote wallowing is just so negative. And that's another reason I left my profession, because there seems to be this trend towards like I'm a victim and let's all talk about how I'm a victim, and it's just so backwards. But anyway, in group therapy, you're saying your piece and then you're supporting the next person and the next person and the next person. And there's only one of you, but there might be 6 people in the room. So you're supportive 6 times, and then you're, inquiring or needing only one time. So you're building yourself up more than you're being vulnerable. And you're building, you're building other people up in an environment that is both held and protected. There's rules in place. So no one can get it really out of hand. Well, if they can, but they would never be coming back to that group. So there's a real sense of security, of responsibility, of accountability. Super big important word when in that whole realm, accountability. So this is kind of what I'm hoping to impress upon you in whatever group you get yourself involved in, your mini awakened group or your big awakened group, or but as much as you get upset about things, I want you to spend time building each other up, because trust me, the advice that you give is the most amazing advice for you to take. I'm pretty good at my own life, but I'm an amazing psychotherapist. Um, And if I could take all my own advice, if I could be my own client, I would be amazing. I would be so on top of it, which is another amazing bit of advice, Take your own advice. Anyway, I don't want this to be a big long thing. I don't know if I really have any explosive stories about my world into the, awakening of the now. I mean, I know I do, but I don't really want it to be about me. I really want to take the focus away from that, and just at the same time, though, I do want you guys to feel reassured. So anyway, I hope that you do. I am going to wrap this up right now. I do think I want to put on a little, a little something for, oh, sorry, a little something for one more song for you guys. And let's see, what's it gonna be? Yeah, I think it's gonna be this one. And I really hope to see you guys in a week, to hear from you. And yeah, just stay strong, and God bless, and stay warm. I hope you have a wonderful week.
Thank you. This is a new song I wrote about my ranch. I live on a ranch in California. I just bought it a while ago from these two lawyers. And there was an old man living on it. I don't know if you have things like that here, like foreman on ranches. It's like an old caretaker who takes care of all cows, fences and everything. So I wrote this song for him. Old man, look at my life. I'm a lot like you were. Oh man, look at my life. I'm a lot like you were. Oh man, look at my life. 24 and there's so much more. Live alone in a paradise that makes me think of two. Love lost such a cost. Give me things that don't get lost, like a coin that won't get tossed, rolling home to you. My life, I'm a lot like you. I need someone to love me the whole day through. I want to look in my eyes and you can tell that's true. Lullabies look in your eyes, run around the same old town. Doesn't mean that much to me, to mean that much to you. I've been first and last, look at how the time goes past, but I'm all alone at last.